This is AF Cast, the video game podcast. And here's your host, Malcolm Sheaver.
Soundtracks have had a lasting impact on a lot of gamers' lives. When we think of Halo, we always think of the angelic singing that occurs when we open the game. Another example is Doom. If you're familiar with the game, you probably instantly thought of the raging heavy metal music that is prominent in the game. There's the classic Mario soundtrack, the robotic music in Portal, and the exciting music of the Call of Duty series. This week on AFCast, we'll find out what about a game's soundtrack makes a game so memorable and fun to play. I'm here with Bryce M, and yeah, so I guess what has made soundtracks so memorable for me, well, for one, I always pretty much download the soundtracks as fast as I can after I get a game, and I usually listen through it multiple times, because most of the time they're pretty good. But I feel like for me, they really set a setting in the game. Like, they make it, I don't know, I feel like most of the time when I remember a game, and I've thought games, like my top list of games always has really good soundtracks. Like, I feel like you don't always say that for combat or story, but I feel like no matter what, for me at least, my top games they always have good soundtracks. So, what has made soundtracks so memorable for you?
So, like Malcolm, I have downloaded a couple game soundtracks, but for me, a lot of the game soundtracks that I like are more story-driven games, where when I play like fast-paced action games, I'll usually turn my music off for the most part. But when I'm playing something like, I know I've downloaded the Far Cry soundtrack, because when I'm playing a story game and I kind of am just, when you delve into what your character is, I really connect to the music then, because it's kind of, you feel like you're in the setting with the characters.
Yeah, it really adds on to the story.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel like it's just, like, I feel like that's how it is for movies and TV shows as well. Like, without music, it would just be just awkward. Like,
Especially the Spider-Man dancing scene.
because if you're not there, then it's like you need something to immerse you into that world.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And music kind of acts as like that gateway.
Yeah. And I feel like soundtracks have multiple personalities, where like fighting might be intense and exciting music, while like driving around in a game could be like more mellow and sweet. And then there's also like unique music that always occurs that is recognizable, kind of like the Halo theme, or like, once again, the Dooms, like, fighting demons is always rock music. And even the first comers, this stuff becomes highly recognizable almost immediately, especially when you go into like a boss battle or something like that.
So yeah, as he said, like, every game has its own feel to it, and a lot of that comes from the music. Like, I played Halo a little bit, but not a ton. But it's one of those games where as soon as you hear the theme song, or like the theme for it, you know exactly what game it is.
Yeah, even if you don't play the game.
Yeah. And it's just, a lot of games have that, where it's, you hear it and you know what game it is, and the music kind of becomes not what the game is known for, but a huge factor in like the name of the game is the music.
Yeah, it's kind of like seeing the special like title for like Gears 5. Like, if you see that gear in the Gears 5 title, you know it's Gears 5. And I feel like music has that impact a lot of the time. Like,
Yeah.
As soon as you hear the music, you're like, oh, you immediately picture like the cover of Halo, or at least something of Halo, or at least just know it's Halo. So yeah, so soundtracks are also like what allows games to be remembered. Like we've said multiple times now, like, it really imprints that in your mind. And like, when you think of these games, you can't help but to think of the music that is in it as well. So it goes the other way around, where essentially it's, if you were to start thinking about Halo, you would immediately think of the Halo theme. Not just if you were to listen to the Halo theme, you'd all of a sudden, get into, like, remember Halo. It always works the other way around.
Yeah. And it's, as he said, we've said a million times, it's a big, staple of a game.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of games are, you hear the sound, you know exactly what game it is or what series it is. And if you don't have good soundtracks in your game, it can ruin a game.
Yeah. Like, I don't think there's any soundtrack like the Portal soundtrack. like sure, Halo has some close relatives like Destiny that sound very similar to it just because they use the same composer basically. But like there's things like Portal where it's just like no one can recreate that. Like there's never going to be a game that's going to have that music again. Like it's so special and specific and it only works for that game. Like if you put it anywhere else, it's not going to work. So it's just, I don't know. It's interesting. So our next topic is the psychology of games. So we kind of just talked about the impacts. Then later we will be talking about kind of like the building of the actual soundtrack. So let's get into psychology. So a master's thesis by Laura Levy on the effects of background music on video game play performance, behavior, and experience in extroverts and introverts. Whew! Okay. Showed that faster tempo music actually hinders mental arithmetic, like free recall, and even like verbal comprehension, which makes games like Doom and Call of Duty better for this like fast type of tempo music because you don't have to do as much thinking. Yeah,
They're more mindless
just
games.
Run and gun.
Yeah.
And so like that kind of adds to what I was talking about earlier with personality. Like that's kind of the personality of Doom and Call of Duty is you just run in and you fire. That's pretty much the gist of it.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you don't have to focus, so they're able to do these kinds of music because when you're playing, it's person there, shoot them, person there, shoot them. It's not having to think, talk.
It's very linear.
Yeah. It's not like you don't have to sit there and think of possible solutions to problems. It's your gun is your solution.
Like, do you know how annoying it would be if you're playing Uncharted trying to solve a puzzle inside of a tomb or something like that, and you just hear this rock music in the background while you're trying to focus? Like, that would be so annoying.
Screamo.
Yeah. It would be funny and really stupid, and everyone would hate the game for it, but it would be bad. But yeah, so like throughout the study, music did not have an effect on gameplay behavior when it came to like duration of actually solving puzzles or like doing a certain task in the game. But it did increase the amount of movement in the game. So like basically people were moving to the beat of whatever the song was, and they noticed more mouse movement and mouse clicking. Or just mouse movement. I don't remember which one it is. But participants of the experiment cited that, quote, the music beat made them want to work faster and time their motions with the music, end quote. And overall flow was increased when listening to music rather than not listening to music. What are your thoughts on this, Bryce?
Well, it's kind of one of those things where when you hear something going quickly, your brain is just like, oh, it's going quick, I should go quick.
Yeah.
Because like when you sit there and you're in a game and you hear this fast music, your brain kind of makes a connection where, oh, the music in this game right now is fast, which means I should match that.
Not to mention that your brain is like run on patterns.
Yeah.
So like if you can match the pattern of your body to the beat of a song, all of a sudden that's what makes the movie like Baby Driver so satisfying, is that to the beat of everything, as soon as it would hit the beat, you'd hear a car door close, or you'd hear something get thrown and hit the wall. Or even like one of my favorite parts with the song Tequila is going on, the gunshots are matched perfectly with everything that's going on. And they actually drop the beat and let the gunshots take place of it because of how synced it is. And they said that they worked hours on end trying to match this up perfectly because they had to do this all in one live shot. And that to me was amazing. And that's what makes it so satisfying to watch and listen, is because as you're listening to everything that's going on, everything's working so smoothly and it's at the flow, which is also why when the music gets disrupted, you can actually see the pain that's caused in the movie because of the music being disrupted. It's really interesting.
And this is also the reason that like games like Guitar Hero and Beat Saber are so big, and they're very complicated.
Especially Beat Saber.
They're very complicated games. Like when you think about it, all these different things that you have to do at precise times. But through the music, it makes it a lot easier.
And once again, you're like hitting these blocks as
Yeah.
beats are going on. So it's that same aesthetic pleasing of the brain that
And it makes your brain register it better to make you
Yeah.
do better at the game.
Yeah. Yeah, so video game music was designed to keep you calm so that you don't get frustrated. And then also so that way it makes you more interested in what you're doing. Like people who playtest games without video game music have been known to become bored easily with the game and give it a lower rating. So like before, like maybe the game actually does have music, it's just that they haven't implemented it into the game yet. Playtesters have always given it lower ratings. Now that could just be coincidence, but I highly doubt it with the amount of games that this data was showing. But the study did prove this as well, where people listening to the music tended to play for longer and wouldn't get as frustrated when they were messing up in the game. Like this was just a simple kitchen game where you're like making recipes and stuff like that. And if you mess up, then obviously you ruin the dish and people would get frustrated. When the music was occurring, then people would essentially just restart and continue playing for longer and longer and longer. And they wouldn't get as frustrated. And I'm sure those two definitely correlate because if you get frustrated, you want to leave.
Yeah.
So,
And game soundtracks really affect your mood. Like horror games, they actually put in like the music, they put different like pitch things that will actually make your brain feel more scared. And it's completely just the sounds, but it gives you like games can make sounds that make you get nauseous.
Yep.
And it's all through the soundtrack. So it makes you, if they can alter the soundtrack to make it fit whatever feeling they want at that moment in the game.
There was actually a lot of research done on the game. I can't remember what it's called. Amnesia. Because that game made people sick. Like people would, YouTubers who played that game, it became really popular on YouTube for a short period of time. YouTubers were actually getting sick of playing, like not sick of playing the game, but they were sick because they played the game, because the music in it actually was causing them to feel nauseous, like you said. Not to mention that, like, because it ingrains that feeling of fear, and that feeling of fear gives you a twisted feeling in your stomach. And so when you're always expecting something and you're really afraid, then, you just absolutely feel terrible. And then the same thing with, like, sad scenes in video games as well. Like, without the music, I probably wouldn't have cried nearly as much in some scenes, or at least have been sad in some scenes, because it's just, it has an element around it that, like I said earlier in the podcast, really immerses you into the game. And so if you're immersed into it and you're basically, it feels like you're standing next to this person who's dying or something like that, or you're actually the person feeling these feelings towards that person.
That's why a lot of times, even like sad music in games and movies, when like a very sad scene is happening, they actually raise the volume of the music. Like,
Yeah, I've noticed
and it's
that.
a lot of times only during like sad scenes. because the music is meant to make you feel emotion. So
Yeah.
they implement it with this sad scene to make people cry, feel sadder, stuff like that.
They actually do stuff like that in horror games as well. Like going back to Amnesia, the closer that like you came to death, the louder the music became, the louder and more haunting it became. And once again, that instilled that feeling of fear. And so it's to raise emotional impact like on the person, and it works. It works well.
And some games can even do the opposite of that. Like there are some horror games where you have like music going on the entire time and it'll just randomly stop.
Yeah, that freaks me out.
Yeah.
That freaks me out.
And that is completely designed to make you be like,
Because all of a sudden, if
crap.
it's completely silent, then
Yeah.
you're just like, shit. Yeah.
you know that something is about to happen, or it's meant to make you think that something is about to happen.
Or what's also really nice, and it's what's really satisfying, is if there's a scary part in the game. Like I remember Metro Exodus doing this when you were going against like these blind gorilla things. Once you escape them, like this this music that wasn't horror, but it wasn't like sad or any really specific mood. It was just lighter, and so you're just like, oh, I'm out of it.
It's
Like,
calming music.
like I'm out of the way. I'm good. I'm chill. Like, so yeah. And they also studied they also hypothesized differences between extroverts and introverts, and they actually found that there was no correlation between the two of them during the study, which I found was really interesting, but I also feel like makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I feel like a lot of extroverts play video games, a lot of introverts play video games, and it's that autonomy that allows you to differ, but I don't know. I think it's also just that it's a task, so you don't really
Yeah.
have to
Because
talk.
extroverts versus introverts is social things, and games especially aren't really, well,
They can be,
they can be social based,
but it's, it's autonomous. Yeah.
And a lot of times that you're talking about these soundtracks and stuff, it's not really anything to do with the social
True. It's
aspect
usually
of it.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on to our last portion of the podcast, which is building a soundtrack. So while I was doing research, I found an article called How to Plan the Soundtrack of a Video Game Effectively, A Guide to Music Conceptualization by Valerio Villardo. Once again, not to mention whoever you are, Valerio Villardo, that is an amazing name.
Amen.
Like, amazing. But the article essentially talked about actually building a soundtrack, and so naturally I became interested. So first you want to conceptualize the music, and quote, music conceptualization can be compared to sketching the blueprint for a building. Before you get into the details of how to decorate the rooms of the building, you need to decide how many floors there are, the size of each floor, and the number of rooms, end quote. And basically, you're setting the stylistic and creative options for your soundtrack. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you have to know what the game is and what to expect for your music when you're going into it, because there are games where stuff has gotten scrapped really late on, and in my opinion, those games, the soundtrack isn't as good.
Yeah.
Like
Agreed.
Destiny, for example, a lot of stuff got scrapped really late on into the game, like
and that's
game
why
production.
it ended up being so similar to Halo.
Yeah, it ended up being really similar to Halo because the guy who wrote all the music was rushed, and he was like, I need to write all this music for these new parts that got added and the stuff, and get rid of the stuff that got deleted, so it didn't come out as good.
And guess what? He used stuff that was originally designed for Halo.
Yeah.
He either slightly changed it or put it as is, which is why I don't really like the music that much in Destiny when you're playing. Like, I like it listening to it. I don't like it when I'm playing Destiny. It's not that good at correlation.
It's
in my
not
opinion.
meant for the game.
Yeah.
It's meant for a different game, and that's one of the problems. That's why you have to know what you're making the music for.
Yeah. I really liked his analogy of the floors and rooms, because it's just like, it feels like basically what he's saying is you want to build a foundation and then build all like the meat and like you have all the bones, but you want to have the meat and the flesh and blood and everything like that in that soundtrack. And he actually came up with an 8-list thing for building this. So it's gather and revise game materials. This is basically the conceptualization. And then identify the function goals of the music. So this is basically just finding the like genre and mood of the actual game. And then decide the genre and moods. I don't really understand this now that I'm looking at it more, because he said that the functional goals were the genres and the moods. So I don't know why define is afterwards, but
well, I think it's
or decide.
I think
rather,
it's like
not
kind
define.
of identify all of these different things and then decide, because there's multiple genres for one game. There's multiple moods in a
decide
game,
which one
and
of
decide
them.
which ones you want to match together for
Okay,
these
that
specific
makes more
songs
sense.
and soundtracks.
That's why I'm confused now and not when I was looking at it first. And then he also said like create a music asset list. So basically like creating like matching stuff with different music, so like fight scenes or sad scenes, horror scenes, anything like that. And then define adaptive elements in the music, so like stuff that might cut out or get brought in if something specific happens. This is definitely more for like open world games where anything can happen at the switch of I don't know. And then create a music guide. So this is essentially for whoever is going to actually be like making the soundtrack for your game. And then create music design documents. Basically the entire time you should be documenting everything, so that way you know what you're doing and you don't fall off pace.
You know what the different moods are of the songs,
Yeah.
so people don't have to listen to it when trying to make the actual soundtrack.
And we're making a lot of hand movements right now. I'm flailing my arms. Yeah, a lot of times during these podcasts, we end up flailing our arms around a lot.
I'm a very physically expressive person when I talk.
Yes, so am I. Not to mention, I'm like making shapes with my hands all the time when I'm doing stuff. So, but you guys can't see that.
Shapes.
But the last step is to revise. So essentially, look back at what you've done. Make sure it's all good, and I'm assuming there's also probably some kind of rinse and repeat just to double check everything as well. So yeah, I really like that building of it. So yeah, I really like soundtracks in games. It's probably one of my favorite parts of games. I feel like I feel like so much of story. I know we said this a lot, but still, it needs to be emphasized that so much of stories is the music. Like The Last of Us, the music in that game is amazing. It really sets the mood every time that you know what to expect when the music starts, and it sets that for you. It makes it so that way you know that the next time that this plays, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. And like, I really like soundtracks in games, but I also, back to the whole point of sometimes it distracts your focus.
Yeah.
So in games like Siege or games where I'm actually like trying to focus and being able to communicate effectively, I turn my
Mostly
music
competitive.
off. Yeah.
Yeah.
More competitive games, I'll turn my music off. But whereas I'm doing story games and stuff, I'll leave it the full volume, because that's what the developers intended for you to have, was that full volume of the music for the full emotion from it.
Yeah, I think all games where it's that, except for Doom, I think all games where it's like that, just random music or fast-paced music, I kind of just take it away, because I don't need it. I don't want it. It actually does kind of pull my focus, even though I'm doing run and gun, but that's just because I tend to be more of a tryhard than most people. A lot more. So yeah, so I feel like Rainbow Six Siege especially, because it's very competitive. Same thing with like CSGO, League of Legends. Like all of those games, I can't imagine playing with music. Like it seems too foreign.
Yeah.
To play with music.
And there is some things where, like, I know for me, music will sometimes help, me focus on these things. It's like a very thin line though of what music helps me focus and what music distracts. So usually when I play games like Siege and stuff, I'll put my own music, like my own playlist running in the background, because then it's, the songs, you know what to expect from the songs, stuff like that. So I just turn it down like to the lowest setting I can.
That's when you get to pick.
Yeah, you get to pick. And it's just like, I turn it down to the lowest setting I can, so it's like barely there, but it's something else for me to...
I was really excited. I don't remember what game it was, but there was supposed to be a game that was supposed to come out last year. Maybe it already did. Like I said, I don't remember what game it was for, but they said they were actually going to allow you to choose what music you listen to on the soundtrack. So basically you get to go to a page in the settings that was just soundtrack, and you basically got to click checkboxes whether or not this music was in it. And I thought that was amazing, because I was like, if like you really like everything else, but there's this one thing that is kind of distracting for you, then you could just be like, nope.
That's also why I liked like Black Ops 3, because there was a terminal in Black Ops 3 in like your safe house where you could do these different cheat codes, and one of which unlocked like 5 more songs that you could have during the campaign.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And like, it's one of those things where it unlocks these new things that you can have, where it's a sound part. It's like part of the soundtrack's kind of locked off for people who actually like want it, because it's a completely optional thing since it's a cheat code. So it's like, for those who want it, they have access to this further.
I also really like Easter egg music as well. Like I remember in Halo, there's a lot of random music cues that if you go to one specific spot, you can just hear this random music, and that's literally it. But I find that so fascinating, and it's kind of funny at times too, especially if it's Easter egg for other games. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a Tom Clancy game that did it. I just don't remember which one it is. I think it was Assassin's Creed, one of the 50 of them.
Yeah, Tom Clancy, Assassin's Creed, Odyssey.
I meant Ubisoft, not Tom Clancy. I'm sorry.
No, Tom Clancy, Assassin's Creed.
Tom Clancy's the Assassin's Creed stuff.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right. Well, yeah. So I think that's all we're going to be talking about today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I really like this topic of soundtracks. It's been something I've been meaning to talk about for a while now, especially since I probably have like 50 video game soundtracks on my phone that I listen to all the time. And yeah, it was fun. It was nice to do the research on it and find the different psychology behind it. Even though some of the research is kind of BS, or articles on the research, I should say. The actual research itself was not BS. But besides all of that, game on.
Find AFcast on Instagram and Twitter, @AFCommunity, for any updates on future podcast episodes. If you want to join the community Discord, find the link in the description or on the website, afcommunity.com.